This is Mac OS Ken.
Mixed reality expectations for Apple. iPhone takes a totally expected hit. And more Apple history up for auction. It is Monday, the 9th of January, 2023. I'm Ken Ray, and this is news from Mac OS Ken. Brought to you by yours truly and supported by people like you, patrons through Patreon. Find out more and add your support at patreon.com/MacOSKen. I have a love-hate relationship with Mark Gurman's Power On newsletter. Gurman made a name for himself in college, maybe even in high school, getting scoops from inside Apple and writing them up for, I think it was 9 to 5 Mac maybe. After college, he got a job with Bloomberg. Ever since, he has driven a lot of the Apple conversation, whether he's right or not. I sort of try to avoid saying what Gurman says, not because I dislike him, but because it's all just rumor. He may be in the know, but we don't know who he knows, nor where he's getting his info week to week. Still, some weeks the suppositions are so big, I feel compelled to mention them since they are going to drive the conversation for at least a day or two. So here's what he said in Sunday's Power On newsletter. There are big expectations for Apple's AR/VR headset, according to Gurman. He says Apple will announce the mixed reality headset during a media event this spring, not wait until WWDC. The device's operating system will be called XROS. Developers will learn all about XROS at WWDC. The headset is likely to be called Reality Pro. The device will ship in the fall of 2023. And according to Gurman, the company is banking on the product as its hot new introduction for this year. With so much expected on the mixed reality front, the rest of Apple's updates and offerings will be muted, in Gurman's estimation. That includes no physical redesigns of any Mac, except for a 15-inch MacBook Air, it seems. While there will be a Mac Pro powered by Apple Silicon, it'll have the same look as the extra-large cheese grater introduced in 2019. Additionally, he's expecting no major redesign for any iPad in 2023, nothing major for Apple Watch, nothing major for AirPods, and nothing at all for Apple TV. He does anticipate a return for the original HomePod at a lower price than its predecessor. On the phone front, Gurman says the new iPhone's hardware could still be impressive. I am told to expect the same screen sizes as the iPhone 14 family, but the Dynamic Island will expand to all 4 models. A titanium frame replaces stainless steel on the Pro models, and there will be haptic volume buttons. The phone also will switch to USB-C and faster processors. As for changes to iOS 17, iPadOS 17, and macOS 14, muted. But, we're not going to hear anything official on those until WWDC. That's not likely to happen until June, which leaves plenty of time to forget what was written in the second week of January. A thing that we knew would happen with iPhone has happened with iPhone. Apple Insider highlights a report from JP Morgan. That firm has had a look at November numbers from the China Academy of Information and Communications Technology, and they were not great for iPhone. For the month of November in China, iPhone shipments were down 58% versus the same month a year earlier. November, you no doubt remember, was the cruelest month where iPhone City production was concerned. Not surprisingly, that cost Apple some market share in the Middle Kingdom, though one might be surprised how little. According to the report, Apple's share of the Chinese smartphone market fell from 21% in November of 2021 to 19% in November of 2022. Apple Insider says the decline in market share wasn't so deep due to the overall smartphone market seeing a 34% decline as well. JP Morgan figures Apple is in for one more down month. Supply of iPhone 14 Pro and Pro Max remained constrained for at least the first half of December. This is all data that would have been baked into current expectations. While not great, JP Morgan is not put off by the news. They've got an overweight rating on Apple shares. The firm's price target on the shares is $190. iOS 16 has hit 70% adoption. That is the word from Mixpanel. Cult of Mac has the industry tracker indicating that Apple's latest mobile operating system hit that mark on the 1st of January, exactly 16 weeks after the operating system's launch. At this stage of the operating system's release, one might wonder whether 70% is good or bad. The answer is yes, maybe. The piece points out that iOS 12 hit 70% adoption about 2 months after its release. That would seem to show a slowing for iOS upgrades. Then again, at this point in its release, last year's iOS 15 had still not hit 70%. That would seem to show a quickening for iOS upgrades. Cult of Mac sees relatively recent iOS updaters breaking into 3 phases. One is early adopters who wanted the update ASAP. The second phase is people who cautiously waited until a few versions were out to clear out bugs. And then there's a final group of about 40% who don't seem to care very much about the new version. The cult has a couple of interesting suppositions for what they see as a slowdown in upgrades. One is that it's hard to wow people with iOS updates at this point, hence no rush. The other is that people don't trust iOS updates not to be buggy, hence no rush. I would point out, as Cult of Mac did, that updates are going faster this year than last year, but if they want to argue with themselves, who am I to argue? Apple appears to be gearing up for a retail presence of its own in India. On Friday, says a piece from the Financial Times, Apple's career page listed openings for 12 different job functions it seeks to fill in various locations within India, including technical specialist, business expert, senior manager, store leader, and genius. 12 listings may not sound like a lot, though that's job types, not positions. With at least some listings thought to be for flagship locations, the piece says the 12 listings imply hundreds of job openings, as a typical Apple store has at least 100 employees, and flagship locations can have up to 1,000 workers. No word in the piece on when any of the stores might open. Apple declined to comment for the Financial Times report. Apple's bought a bit more office space in Cupertino. Don't expect any moving vans, though. The company has actually inhabited the space for over a decade. Apple Insider says the Cupertino company has purchased the building that formerly housed the MeasureX computer control company. Located 2.5 miles from its old HQ at 1 Infinite Loop, the piece says Apple started leasing the new old digs in the summer of 2011. Renamed Results Way, the report says the campus can accommodate up to 1,300 staff. 11 and a half years after move-in, and just ahead of Christmas 2022, Apple reportedly purchased the parcel for an undisclosed sum. And finally today, more Apple memorabilia is up for auction. Truly rare by the sound of it. Apple Insider says an old toolbox that belonged to Apple co-founder Steve Wozniak and the first sign the company used at trade shows are both up for bids. According to the report, both items were owned by M. Thomas Liggett Jr., a facilities engineer for Apple in the 70s, Apple Computer employee 114. Both items were laying around, and he got permission to take both, according to the piece. On the toolbox, Apple Insider says before Liggett was hired, Apple engineers were each given a personalized toolbox. He saw the one with Woz's name on it laying around for a while, got Woz's permission, and took it. The story of the sign is more of a close call. According to the report, Liggett says he discovered a fluorescent light box in the building and learned it was from the first industry trade show that Jobs and Wozniak attended. Liggett says he was told to throw it away, but asked and received permission to take it home. In addition to the trade show work, Apple Insider says the sign was used by Apple for years outside its headquarters in California. It features Apple's old rainbow logo and the words Apple Computer Inc. in retro-futuristic lettering. Actually, back in the 1970s, I guess the lettering would have just been futuristic. Run by Alexander Historical Auctions in Maryland, the keepsakes can be yours to keep, but they will not be cheap. The toolbox is expected to go for between $20,000 and $30,000, while the sign is expected to sell for between $100,000 and $200,000. You can see the items at alexautographs.com. The auction closes on the 27th of January. Today on the Mac Observer's Daily Observations podcast, TMO Managing Editor Jeff Butts and I discuss Mark Gurman's great expectations for a mixed reality headset and placeholder expectations for everything else. Plus, the state of iOS 16 upgrades. That is all today on the Daily Observations podcast from the Mac Observer, online at macobserver.com or wherever you get podcasts. macOS Ken, brought to you by me and supported by people like you, patrons through Patreon. Find out more and add your support at patreon.com/macOSCan. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media, online at backbeatmedia.com. You can reach me a couple of ways. Info at macoscan.com or call 716-780-4080. Until next time, that is news from macOS Ken. I'm Ken Ray.
Ciao.